In this video, you're gonna learn exactly what B2B sales prospecting is, how it works, and why it is an absolute must-have skill if you wanna succeed in the world of sales. What's going on, everybody? It's Patrick here. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, turn on notifications if you wanna see more videos like this, and let's get started. Now, B2B sales prospecting, what exactly is it? And the definition we are gonna use is the act of finding and reaching out to potential buyers with the intentions to build a relationship and eventually close a deal. So why exactly do companies need B2B sales prospecting, right? So for example, if you're, let's say, a software company, right? And let's say you just started, you're not really doing any marketing, nobody knows who you are, and you just hired a bunch of salespeople to try to sell your product or service, okay? So as a salesperson or business development person, it's your job to sell this product or service to people who have no idea who you are. And that means you're reaching out to people cold, right? Ice cold. They don't know anything about your company, but somehow you're supposed to magically generate a meeting with them, with their high-level decision makers, and convince them to buy your product and service and eventually close more revenue for your business. Now, B2B sales prospecting is so important, especially for startups and any new company, because that's the process of finding people who will actually buy your product and services, generating meetings with them with either email, LinkedIn, or cold calling, and then eventually turning those interested potential customers into paying clients, right? So prospecting is that entire process of turning a stranger into somebody who is interested, right? If you do not have this process, well, if you don't have any meetings, you don't even have an opportunity to sell. So that's why sales prospecting is one of the most important skills, especially if you're just starting your sales career, because a lot of times that's the majority of the job when you're just getting things going. Now, the whole goal when it comes to B2B sales prospecting is this: it's to set an appointment, okay? Pretty much nothing else matters except setting appointments with qualified customers or pre-vetted customers so that somebody can come in, talk to them on the phone, meet them in person or video conference, and then close the deal. Now, to make sales prospecting happen and to make it all work, the first step or the first thing that you really need to pay attention to is identifying your ideal customer. So the first step is to identify who is a good fit to buy your product and service, right? So if you have, the most amazing product or service, or maybe you have the cure to cancer, right? And if you're selling it to the wrong person, well, no matter how good of a thing you're selling, or no matter how good you are as a seller, that person is just not gonna buy because they're not a good fit to buy your product and service. That's why the most important part in the beginning is to identify, ideally, who you should even be paying attention to, who you should spend your time on and have a conversation with. Because if you don't have this strategy down and you're going after the wrong people who don't have the money or don't have the need to buy your product and service, you're just gonna be completely wasting your time. So that's why identifying who you should be selling to is the most important first step. And that comes down to what industry these people are working in, what pains do they have, what problems, what are their challenges, what are they willing to pay money to make go away, and how does your solution make those pains go away? Can they realistically see themselves purchasing your product and service? Do they have the money to even pay for your products and services, especially if you're selling something more high-end, right? These are all questions that you need to consider as you do your ideal customer profile research. Now, the next step of B2B prospecting is outreach methods, right? So the main three that are working really well are cold email, LinkedIn messages, and cold calling. Now, people always ask me, Patrick, which one should I do? Should I try all of them at the same time? Should I focus on email? Should I focus on cold calling? And my short answer is this: you wanna first look at your industry and your competition and see how other people are generating leads. So if everyone in your industry is generating meetings with cold email, well, that's a good place to start because it's already proven to work in your industry selling your product and service. If everyone's doing cold calling, we'll do cold calling because that works as well. So every industry is going to be different, right? Cold calling might work in this industry, but may not work in another industry, or cold emailing might work here, but not over here, right? So that's why you gotta pay attention to your competition. And as you're starting out sales prospecting, right? I know it's tempting to try to do everything at once, add someone on LinkedIn, send them a message, they don't respond, send them a cold call, send them an email, right? It's like, there's multiple steps you can take to do this. However, my recommendation, if you're just getting started and you have no idea about sales prospecting, you're doing it for the first time, just try one channel at a time. So if you are doing, let's say, cold email, just focus on cold emailing and try to get some results, right? Because if you're not getting results there, if you're trying to do 3 different things at once and each of them are equally as hard, well, trying to do 3 things at once and splitting your time that way, it's not gonna lead to any great results. Instead, if you focus on one thing, get it right, and then add another element to increase your response rate, that's a better approach in my opinion. But as you start learning this process and you start sending cold emails and you start booking meetings because people are interested and these strategies do work, the next step you have to do is, what do you do after you book a meeting, right? So if you are, let's say, starting your career as a sales development rep or a business development rep, which are generally entry-level sales role where all their role is to generate a meeting and qualify customers, well, the next step naturally is to qualify the customers, right? So this is how it works. As a seller, right, entry-level salesperson, you're gonna, send an email, someone's gonna say, hey, I'm interested in taking a meeting with you, and you hop on the phone, right, or a video chat, whatever it is, for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and basically what your job is to do in that 15 minutes, it's not to sell them anything actually, because selling, it usually takes multiple steps before someone actually makes a purchasing decision. Your job in the beginning is to qualify them, to make sure that you understand what their pains are and that they're actually a potential customer, someone who has a high likelihood of buying your product and service, right? And if you meet a time waster or someone who just wants to get information but they're not gonna buy anything, well, after those 15-minute calls, you drop them right there and you just, maybe you'll follow up with them later on when they're ready, but if not, let them go, right? So you have to qualify the customer to see whether or not they can even be a customer, right? But once you qualify, you ask the questions, they have pain, they have a budget and things like that, the next step is actually usually to pass this deal, pass this lead to a qualified closer, someone who has experience closing deals, and they're gonna be the ones that takes them through the rest of the sales process. Whether it's a presentation, demonstration, all things like that, an account executive, right, a salesperson or a closer is the one that actually does that job. But when you're just focused on prospecting, your job is to generate the meetings. Other times, your job might be to prospect and close deals. In that case, you have to do both steps. But no matter the case, whether you're just generating the leads or generating the leads and closing the deals, the final step of the process is to refine the process, right? Because with every campaign or email campaign that you send out and every meeting that you take with a potential customer and you qualify them, you start to understand who is a good fit to buy your product and service and who is not a good fit, right? And you want to keep adjusting your sales strategy so that you're going after more people who are willing to buy or have the power to buy, and going after less of the people who just don't have the money or don't have the pain and need to buy your product and service, right? And so as you repeat the cycle over and over, you basically refine who you're going after, your ideal customer profile gets tighter and tighter, and you really clearly know who should be buying your product and service, and you know what messaging you should have when you send your emails or your cold calls or wherever the case is. And you also get a lot better on the phone and you know what to say in order to get someone interested. Your results should just keep getting better and better and better as you practice over time. In the beginning, when you don't know what you're doing, you might send a bunch of emails out and nobody responds. That's totally normal. However, it shouldn't keep happening month after month. You should be getting better. You should keep adjusting your strategy because you're understanding what works and you're understanding what doesn't work. Because if something doesn't work, don't do it again. And then you try a different strategy. Eventually, you'll hit something that does work as you start getting meetings and you can start closing more deals. And this is really an overlooked strategy, right? Because the sales prospecting, in general, it is a simple process, but it takes energy, effort, discipline to actually get better and better at this process. And with that said, that's gonna be B2B sales prospecting explained. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications if you wanna see more videos like this, and make sure you check out my other videos. And let me know in the comments, do you enjoy videos about this where I explain concepts about sales and strategies? Let me know, because I'm always happy to make more videos for you. So with that said, my name is Patrick Deng, and I will see you guys in the next one.